Welcome, guys. This is really a very strange feeling for me because, I know that you all, except the online people watching us, hosting an English session in your own country where, obviously English is not the native language here. We are in Turkey, so for the people who are watching us online, just to let them know. So I should be hosting this session in Turkish, right? I'm not used to this, especially in your own country if you are hosting a session and it is getting translated to the people that you actually can talk in your native language. That's a strange feeling. But I guess it will be much more helpful for the people watching us online to understand because, the event is called Middle East and Africa Phone Camp. So that's why we need to go in English. But if you do have any questions during the whole day, I have 3 sessions right now until 5 p.m., I guess. I will be on stage. So if you have any questions, you can shoot them in your native language. As far as it's Turkish, English, French, or German, I should be able to understand it. Okay? And I'm going to, thanks for that. So I'm going to answer you in Turkish and then actually, can we do 2-way translation? If I answer it, good, cool, great. So let's start slowly. We will start with the 101 stuff, very introductory level, okay? Let me ask first, how many people ever did anything about Windows Phone, any kind of development? Raise your hands. 4 or 5, that's great. Okay, it looks like we got the right people in the room then. Because we will start from the introductory level, like you know nothing about Windows Phone, which should be the case, obviously. But first, let me introduce myself a little bit, just a little bit. So what I do is I work in a company called IdentityMind. That's a US-based company, but I work remotely from Turkey. And I am a senior director there, managing the operations in Middle East and Africa region. We are doing a lot of Windows Phone stuff. So the Twitter application, the IMDb application, the Amazon Audible application, that all this stuff that you see on the Windows Phone Marketplace are stuff that we had our hands on. What else I do? I'm an MVP at Microsoft, specifically on Windows Azure, the product Windows Azure. I am part of the INETA Association, the International .NET Association, and we do a lot of volunteer sessions like this one, actually. And then I'm in the Microsoft Regional Director program, and this is the confusing part, I know. Being a Microsoft Regional Director doesn't mean that I work for Microsoft, okay? So I don't work for Microsoft. I work for another company. I am an independent, and I love to be independent because that makes me free when I start speaking about Microsoft products. So, and I'm an OK Developer Champion, which means I am pretty much focused on Windows Phone as well. I got a couple of books and articles, and I'm a public speaker in some of the conferences that you see, and I do some university teaching as well. So I guess that's enough about me, right? But still, these are the endpoints that you can find on the internet. You can get in touch with me, the Facebook account and the Twitter. On Twitter, specifically, I do a lot of what? I distribute a lot of free stuff, and I know everyone likes that, right? So it's been just 2 weeks that I started distributing some Azure passes. In our region, Azure is not exactly available, so if you need an Azure pass, it could be a nice idea to follow me on Twitter so you can get some of the Azure passes if you want to try it out. Thanks. So here are the list of topics. Obviously, the topic that we're going to cover during these 3 sessions is Windows Phone. But if you have any questions about the stuff that you see on this list, I should be able to answer it, okay? Or at least I will try my best to answer it. But don't shoot the questions about other products or other topics during these sessions, okay? Just catch me during the breaks and ask me whatever you want about these topics only, by the way. Besides this, I know nothing, okay? Let's start. So today, we don't have anything to do with your laptops. Actually, besides checking your email and tweeting, you can just close your laptops if you want. Do not try to take notes, because I know I'm going to go very, very fast, because there are a lot of topics that we're going to cover. So it's not possible to do it like very, very slow. We will go very fast. So if you try to take notes, I don't think you will be able to catch up. But what we're going to do is, during these 3 sessions, everything is recorded, okay? Both my screen is getting recorded. Hopefully, Camtasia will work well, and I will be able to have the recording, including the sound recording. I will be able to post it online on my blog tonight. Okay, I will be honest, not tonight, tomorrow maybe, okay? So don't try to take notes, just try to follow me. So here's what I'm going to do. I got Visual Studio installed, obviously. This is something you can download from the internet. There is even the free version of this. And after you download the Visual Studio, you will need to download something called Windows Phone Developer Tools, okay? This is exactly the term that you're going to search on Google, on Bing, okay? You're going to search it on Bing. So if you search for it, I'm sure you will find a download package. You download it, you run it, and then you got everything you need about Windows Phone inside Visual Studio. We got an additional software package that we need to download, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Finally project, okay, takes us to Silverlight for Windows Phone. So actually, we have 2 different platforms that we can use to develop apps for Windows Phone. One of them is Silverlight, and the second one is XNA. You know, the final session of today is about XNA specifically. If you want to build games, that's the place that you need to go. But besides games, for everything else, Silverlight is there, okay? So besides games, whatever you want to do, you need to pick Silverlight. That's the best choice. What I'm going to do right now is to click on this Windows Phone application item and create an empty app from scratch. Totally empty, nothing on stage. And the first question that I need to answer is, which version of the platform do I need to target? Here is the good news. Starting yesterday, I'm not sure. I read that news yesterday, actually. The marketplace is only supporting the new versions, okay? The new version of the apps, which means we have different versions of Windows Phone, like the 7.0 and 7.5. Actually, the marketing name of the version called 7.5 is a lot different than the SDK name. As you see currently here, when I open this drop-down list, we got 2 versions, 7.0 and 7.1. So what if I'm going to build an application for 7.5, Windows Phone 7.5? Here's the trick. Microsoft really likes to mess with our brains. Here's the trick. The Windows Phone 7.5, the operating system called 7.5 version, is targeted through the SDK version 7.1. So the SDK 7.1 means I'm targeting Windows Phone 7.5. And that's what we're going to do. Click OK. And here's my new app. I guess this look is pretty familiar to all of you, right? But just in a little bit different way. What I see currently is a design surface and some kind of an XML, right? Do you remember this from somewhere? Because I do. I do remember the old front page days. I had some kind of XML, which was HTML, right? And then I had some design surface. I write some XML, and the design surface updates. Or I do something on the design surface, and then I see some kind of a markup generated on the back end. So this is all happening. This is kind of the same thing for me as a developer. The only thing that changes is the meaning of all these tags, right? Semantically, the XML is a little bit changed. And usually what you do with these kind of markups when you saw them, you want to use some kind of a designer, right? I mean, if you are geeky enough, we love, as developers, we love to just hard code them, right? And write the code on our own. But I mean, we don't want to do the design on Windows Phone as developers. How many designers do we have in the room, by the way? Okay, as usual, 3, just 3. Okay, so we don't want to tell a designer, hey, you can just write this XML and it will look beautiful. Or we don't want to write the XML on our own as a developer because obviously it will not look good. So we need a tool which should help the designer to build the UI, actually write this XML code instead of the developer doing that. And that tool is called Expression Blend. So what I'm going to do right now is to right-click this main page XAML. And as you see here, we got a command called Open in Expression Blend. When I click it, we will see a new tool popping up. It will open the same project that we just created in Visual Studio. They are 100% compatible with each other. So you can open the same project in Expression Blend, the same project in Visual Studio. Hopefully, you will have a designer and you will never open Expression Blend. Okay? We should talk about the role of a designer or the role of this person who is going to use this app. We always say like, hey, there's this designer who will use this tool. It looks good, but who is the designer? Does he know what an event is? Does he know what a buttons click is? Does he know what a behavior is technically? Does he have any kind of technical background or not? So usually, the designer, the artistic designer that we call designer, is someone who just does the artistic work. They decide if this will be red or blue, if it will be rectangle or circle, but they have no idea what a buttons click is, or they have no idea what a list boxes item template is. They don't know any kind of technical background. So this is important because if it is the artistic designer, the person that we call designer, if it is the artistic designer has nothing to do with Expression Blend. They will use Expression Design maybe, that's totally another tool, okay? Or maybe they can use Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator, okay? We got straight imports from these third-party tools. So then, if it is not exactly the artistic designer who is going to use the Expression Blend, who is the right person to use the Expression Blend? I mean, we already said that this is not the developer. Who is going to use the Expression Blend? The implementer, okay? There should be someone who will implement that design on top of your application. There should be someone, the UX architect maybe, there should be someone who should design how the application will react. You got a list of products, right? Should they be listed in a list box or in a data grid or in a drop-down list? Who is going to do that decision? Do you want to do that as a developer? You shouldn't actually, because it's not your job. You are a technical guy who writes the C# or the VB code, but someone else needs to decision if it is more appropriate to use a drop-down list instead of a list box. So this guy, the UX guy, should use Expression Blend. Here is the bad news. How many companies do you know, or how many of you have a UX designer in his or her company? None. I knew. So we don't have these people. We don't have the implementers. That's one of the biggest mistakes maybe we don't have in our whole workflow of building rich apps. We call them rich user experience apps, but we don't have a UX guy in the workflow. So who's going to do that? If you don't have the UX guy in the team, who's going to do that? The artistic designer can't do it. You will do it. You will do it as a developer. So don't be afraid from this tool, okay? If you have a UX implementer, you shouldn't be using this, okay? You would never need to use this. But if you don't have that guy in your team, you will be the guy who will use Expression Blend. So the main point is, Expression Blend is not a totally designer tool. It's an implementer tool. And implementers have technical background. So it's appropriate for us as technical people to use Expression Blend. Because usually what I see in projects in companies is they don't have the UX implementer, and then the guy, the developer, thinks that Expression Blend is a totally designer tool, and he doesn't use it. He starts writing everything from scratch in XML, in Visual Studio, and that's a pain in the neck. So, back to our topic. So this is the Expression Blend. This is the place that we're going to create all our animations or all our UI, the layout, design. This will be the place that we're going to do all the fancy stuff. Let me zoom out a little bit. So let's start from the animations, because I know that's the part you want to learn very fast, right? The fancy stuff. Obviously, I'm not a designer. Okay, so I'm going to do a lot of ugly stuff. This is the best I can do. Circle, there's no risk. There is always a circle. The object is an ellipse. So what I want to do is to make this ellipse simply disappear. Okay? If you have Silverlight background or WPF background, this will look very, very familiar. Here's the good thing about Microsoft. If you learn something, they change a lot, but it's like 70 or 80% of the know-how, you just keep it, okay? The change happens on the upper stack, like the 20 or 30% changes a lot, but the baseline is always the same. So that's the good thing I really like. So if you did some Silverlight work in the past 4 years, this is exactly something that you know. Making this ellipse disappear means creating an animation. And in order to create an animation, I need to click this little plus button in here, first of all, and give a name to my newborn animation, right? It says create storyboard resource. These are 3 very important keywords. Create, yeah, obviously I'm creating something. Storyboard, it looks like I'm creating a storyboard. I was thinking like I was creating an animation, which looks like an animation is a storyboard, right? And resource. I'm creating this, whatever I do create, which is an animation, I'm creating this as a resource that I'm going to be able to use in a feature point. So what's going to be the name of this resource? Let's say anim go away, okay? When I hit the OK button, you will see the UI will change drastically. Here we go. So this is the timeline where we will start creating our animation. If you have some background, not specifically Silverlight or WPF, back in the Flash years, right? If you do some Flash work, this will look familiar, except the 0, 1, and 2 that you see up there are not the frame counters. They are not frames. They are seconds. So we start from 0, we go to the first second or the second second. So in this case, I'm going to build an animation about this particular ellipse in here. So I want to create a keyframe first of all. And creating a keyframe means saving the state of this object at that particular second, which means at the 0 second, I'm going to save the state of the ellipse. Hit, done. Okay? So this is ready. At the beginning that I know that this ellipse will exactly look like it looks at the moment. Go to the first second. Create another keyframe. So now I got 2 keyframes, 2 states recorded, okay? And I am going to change the state information for the first second. So when this yellow vertical line is at the first second, I do change some of the properties of this ellipse, like the opacity. Make it 0. So the ellipse is not visible right now. When I go back to the beginning of this animation, the ellipse is visible. This is so simple. Create some kind of a difference, right? Difference in the state. Zoom out. So it looks like my animation is done. This is all that I wanted to create. Now I need to save this animation, right? So like we did talk at the beginning of the session, whatever we do in these IDEs, okay, in these UIs, the designer tools, is to create the XML that we just saw in Visual Studio. At the moment, I have the XAML file. By the way, it's Extensible Application Markup Language, the long style. The main page.xaml file is edited. Whatever I did in the UI, creating a storyboard, created some kind of an XML on the back end, and it is trying to save it. So in order to save this animation, I can simply hit Control-S, save it. But it looks like the animation is still open. I want to go back to my stage, I mean, to the context where I was able to put objects instead of animating something. I want to go out of this animation. I'm going to click this little X button in here to go back to the stage context. Here is the 2 major problems or the mistakes that I see people do. First, they forget to close the animation. So if I forget to close the animation and I continue working, I put new objects, I change properties, and all that work goes on, the whole work that you do will be part of the animation. It will be recorded as an animation. And when you close the animation, you will lose that work. That's really painful. So when you are done with the animation editing, close it. The second mistake, stopping the recording of the animation. Don't do it, because you are still in the animation. If you are done, go out of it. Don't stop recording, or don't forget it. Just go out of it. I'm done with this animation and close it. So my timeline is gone. The animation is ready. And now is the time to run this animation. I want to run this animation. And there are two different ways to run the animation. If you are the implementer, hopefully you don't want to write some C# code, right? So you should be able to run this animation very easily from this UI. I go to the assets. So the assets panel is the panel where we see all our controls that we have on Windows Phone. And we got something called behaviors in there. Behaviors are like components that developers can build for implementers. So it's like the implementer wants to do something, but he wants to do that particular action all the time, like starting an animation, playing a music or something, okay? This is an action that the implementer wants to do all the time for every project, multiple times. So if I needed to write some C# code to play an animation, what would I do as an implementer? I would go to the developer and say, hey, can you please play this animation when I click this button? And then the developer will start writing code, and it will happen. But we don't want to really have this round trip all the time. I mean, every time the implementer wants to play an animation, he doesn't really need to go to the developer. Instead, maybe the developer can create some kind of a component and deliver it to the implementer and say, hey, use this. If you want to play an animation, use this. And there's already a list of behaviors inside the SDK, inside the software development kit. And I'm going to use one of them, which is control storyboard action. Sure. Sorry about that, by the way. OK. I'm going to slow down, which would hopefully be a lie, because I'm so used to be. OK, anyway. Stop me again if I speed up, OK? So the control storyboard is here. Let's drag and drop this into where? Nowhere, because we didn't put a button. OK. Let's start from here. First, we need a button, right? Here's our button. Now, drag and drop the control storyboard inside the button. So I assign a control storyboard action to the button. So now, I can take a look at the list of properties of this particular control storyboard action. So the control storyboard action says, my source name is my parent, which is the button, right? The event name that I keep track of is the click event. So I am tracking the button's click, the button which is my parent, okay? The click event is the one that I'm tracking. And when you click that button, what I'm going to do is to play the anim go away animation. That's so simple for an implementer to arrange it. We got different actions in here, like toggle play pause, stop it, pause it, resume it, or whatever, okay? This is the implementer way of starting an animation. So now I will hit F5 from the keyboard and start the Windows Phone emulator. You could have a phone. You can attach it with a cable, and you can run your application on the phone. Or you can simply use the emulator. F5. Hopefully that will run. So imagine I'm an implementer, by the way. I don't even have Visual Studio installed. Maybe I have the emulator, and I can test the UI. It did compile the app, deploy to the emulator, and here we go. I am simply going to click this button, and the animation is playing. That's it. So I did a very, very simple animation, because our point is I will go back and read the XML code. So if I was creating some kind of a very complex animation, which I could do, I mean, it's not hard. You saw it. Just create differences between states, and that's it. I could move the object. I can turn it around, and so on. But because I want to go back and read that XML code, so I want to keep it a lot simple to understand what is going on really on the back end. But before we go into that, we need to check how to run this animation from the code, from the C# code. So what if I need to decide if the animation should be run or not when you click the button? Maybe I'm going to connect to some kind of a services, pull some data, and decide, and according to that data, if I should run the animation or not. So I can't do it with behaviors. I need to do it with my own C# code. How do I do that? First, delete this control server action, okay? So we are back at the first point. Reload. Here we go. This is the main page XAML that we edited. We will take a look at that into that just in a second. But first, let's go to the C# file. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is to be able to attach an event listener to the button's click event. How can I access the button? Find control. What kind of a parameter the find control method can have? Like the name of the button? Right? I need to know the name of the button to be able to access that button. Let's see here. The button name equals no name. It doesn't have any name. So here's the difference between Visual Studio and Blend, the perspective. If you drag and drop a button inside Visual Studio, it will have a default name. It's obvious. We all know that, right? Button 1. But if you drag and drop a button inside Expression Blend, it will not have a default name. Because Blend, it's not specifically about the button, but about all these objects, the ellipse, the rectangle, all this stuff that we drag and drop on top of the surface. These are all programmatic objects. But Blend doesn't know if really the developer needs to access these objects or not. So Blend, by default, because Blend is targeting implementers, Blend by default doesn't give a name to these objects. Because at the end, when you are done with your projects, you will see like hundreds of thousands of objects on the same screen. Because everything that you create to create the UI, every line is an object. So you don't really want to give names to all these hundreds and thousands of objects that you will never access, right? Because it will just make harder for the runtime to find that particular object, or it will create some backend pointers for that so that you can access, which you will never use. This is a vast of memory. This is a vast of everything. So when I put an object on the stage, I need to give that a name. Let's go here and say button. Click. Save it. So here's the second problem. These are two different tools, right? Expression Blend and Visual Studio. Even though they use the same solution file, they are not exactly connected to each other. So at the moment, Visual Studio does not know that this button has a name. I changed the XML file in Expression Blend. I gave it a name. But Visual Studio has no idea about it. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. And what I'm going to do is to simply build the project. OK? Here we go. Build the project so that Visual Studio, the background compiler, will go through all the XAML files and create a new IntelliSense menu for me, so that I will be able to access that object. Here we go. Button click is here. So button click's click event should have an event listener. For the people who are using Visual Studio for the first time, here's the shortcut, plus equals, and then twice the tab button from the keyboard. Okay? Plus equals tab tab. This is the way we use the code snippet for this. So the event listener is created. Sorry. Here we go. And now is the time to run the animation. What was the name of the animation? Hopefully I started with a prefix for that. Anim_go_away.begin. Start the animation. I could have ifs or any kind of logic in here. You know, this is the back end, so no problem. Save it, hit F5. It will again start the emulator, deploy the app from Visual Studio this time, and start the app inside the emulator. It will look exactly the same way. Here we go. So what about the XML part? Did Blend really create a huge pile of XML there? Or is it really simple? Let's take a look at that. Here we go. I'm going to close the UI part, the design surface, because I just want to take a look at this XML part. That's it. This is all that Blend created actually from out of what we did inside Blend's UI. So I got a storyboard. Here we go. The XML tag is here. And I see that this storyboard is saved as a resource inside my phone application page. So a resource means that that's a static object, static for this particular context, okay? And from my code, I can access it by its name and start using it. That's always alive when the page initializes. So I got the storyboard, and the name is anim go away. Let's continue reading the XML code in here. It says there is some kind of a double animation using keyframes object. So word by word, I'm going to try to understand this. So I do clearly understand the animation part. I do understand the using keyframes part. I did use keyframes creating this animation. But currently, I have no idea what double means. Or could that be triple or something maybe? We're gonna look at that in a future point. But let's continue reading. Let's start from here. The target of this storyboard is called ellipse. Is it because I created an ellipse? Let's go down and see. It says target name, not target type. Where is the ellipse we created? Here we go. It looks like it was different than this ellipse. It didn't start with the capital letter. This is exactly the name of the object. So the storyboard is targeting the object that it will animate, by its name. I didn't give a name to the ellipse. Did you notice it? And by default, we know that all the objects are unnamed in Blend. When I dragged and dropped the ellipse, it didn't have a name. But when I start creating an animation about that, Blend, by default, started giving names to these objects. So if Blend really needs a name for a particular object, it does give it by default on its own. So it looks like I'm targeting the object by its name. It's cool. So my storyboard is still here, and my target is the ellipse. The ellipse, which is named ellipse. And from this ellipse, what I'm going to animate is the opacity. The way that we write the target property path is a little bit different. We will not be able to go into the details of that. I can just give you some keywords that you're going to search on the internet maybe, and that is dependency properties. But at this point, what we need to know is when I need to write some kind of a target property, I need to find out from which object this property is coming. So I created an ellipse, but the opacity property is there because the ellipse is inherited from UI element object. So the UI element object has a property called opacity, and every UI object that you're going to see in Silverlight, they are all derived from the UI elements. So they all have opacity. And when I need to write some kind of a target property path, I need to find out from which particular object that property is coming and write down this way. So the target property there, the target name is there. It looks like when I created an animation, I have a target object, and then I have a target property of that object. And the next thing that we see in the code is like some numbers. And I can make sense out of these numbers. It looks like at the 0 second, I get a value called 1. And at the first second, I get a value called 0. Does it look like the value of the opacity? Yes. I saw in the expression blend UI, I saw the opacity as a percentage value, but it looks like at the back end, it's something like 1 or 0. So if I start reading this animation code, the XML from beginning, it looks like what I'm doing is I'm targeting an object, I'm trying to change a property of that object, and I'm changing it in different times. So I'm taking the opacity property of this ellipse from 1 to 0. That's what I do. There is no animation. The thing that happens is a change in the value of a property. If that change gets reflected as an animation, that's fine. Here's just one of the tricks that I did in a project a couple of years ago. I had an object called media element. The media element is simply just place video or audio file, okay? And I wanted to fade out the volume of that media element. So I started thinking like, how can I do this, okay? Because fading out an audio is not easy. I mean, you need to process it, right? How can I really do this in an easier way? And then I just noticed that, hey, this media element has a volume property. What if I animate it? So when I animate the volume property of a media element, take it from 1 to 0, you don't see a visual animation, but you see a sound change. We don't really call that animation, right? But I see the change. I feel it in my ears, kind of. I hear it instead of seeing it. So that is very important to understand the logic behind, okay? What you are doing is changing the values of properties. So here's the question. Why do we have the double in here? It's still not clear. Any ideas? So the first instant answer could be like, because we have 2 keyframes. So then my answer is, what if I have 6 keyframes? I don't even know the English word that should map to double when it's 6. No idea. So the thing is, we are animating a double property. The opacity is double. You know, it doesn't go from 1 to 0 instantly. If it did, I wouldn't see anything, right? It goes from 1 to 0 while creating some values between 1 from 0. So the values between 1 to 0 can be there if the property is not an integer, it's a double. Or maybe it could be decimal, I don't know. So in this case, we got double animations. We got point animations. If you got a property of type point, then you start using the point animations, okay? We got color animations. If you got a property type color, the way that you calculate the differences between 2 colors will be different than calculating the differences between 2 double objects. So that's why we need different objects while we use creating storyboards, okay? And the good thing is, when you create animations, you don't really need to take care about these changes. Expression Blend does it transparently to the developer or the implementer. Expression Blend checks what type of property you want to animate and puts the appropriate animation object inside the XML code. But obviously, at some point, you will need to learn this. And that's what proves that Expression Blend is a very good teacher. Create something in the UI, go take a look at the code, the XML code that it should create. Try to read it, try to understand it, okay? If you think you can't do anything with your code, do it on the design surface, and let's go back to the code and start reading it. Because whatever you see in here are just stuff that you can do with C#. Here's the important relation that we need to understand between the C# and the XML markup in here. Every XML element that you see on this surface is actually .NET objects, right? I can do this. I can copy double animation using keyframe, go back to the C# code, and simply start creating an object here, okay? Here we go. That's it. If I go to the XAML and see like async double keyframe, yes, this is the same story. Okay, it looks like the async double keyframe has an XML element called keyTime. How I'm going to do that on backend on my C#? Here we go. It goes on like this. I mean, every XML element that you see on the markup is actually a property on the backend. Every XML attribute is a property. Every XML element is an object. Okay? So when you don't know how to do something, you can do it in Expression Blend. Go back, take a look at the XML code, and then start understanding how things really work. And then you can even go far back and start writing the same thing in your C# code if you need some kind of a dynamic functionality. Everything clear so far? Any questions? I'm going to touch to that point in a future what? Not session. In this session, actually, yeah. We're going to dynamically manipulate an animation. What if, like, I want to decide how long the animation will be? Not in Expression Blend. Me as a developer, because again, the story is I got some kind of data coming from somewhere, and I need to do that decision how long the animation will go, or how transparent the ellipse will be at the end of the animation. Maybe I just don't want to make totally transparent. I want to make 20% transparent. So we can just give a very simple example, like you are building a bar chart, right, with 4 or 5 bars. So you got 4 rectangles. You want to change the height, but how big the rectangle will be is a decision you can do on your C# code. It looks like the animation at that point needs to be dynamically generated or statically generated by dynamically manipulated. Okay? So that's the thing we're going to take a look at that soon. Actually, that will be the next example, I guess. It's a good idea. Any questions? Everything going smooth? Okay. I know we are getting some questions from the internet, from the website as well, but I have no idea how to track that. So I don't know. We should figure out in the break. Okay. So let's start with a fresh project. I got a new project this time. So let's do the example that I just mentioned, the bar chart, or let's make it a line chart. Looks more beautiful. And that's an example I really like. So I want to do a line chart in Windows Phone, and I really don't want to use a third-party component because I'm really not fan of third-party stuff. And I want to show you how easy it is to build something like that. So this is my screen. In my line chart, every line point will be static. Like I'm going to always show 5 products in my line chart. It will not be dynamically scaled according to the count of the products that I will have from the data. So I'm always going to show kind of the top 5 products maybe. So the first thing that I need to do is to draw a line, obviously. So that is why I picked the pen tool, back to surface, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is my line chart. Obviously, this one needs a little bit of change. I'm selecting the line chart. I am deleting the fill, the white fill, reset it. So these little squares in here, they're actually buttons, and when you click, you have this huge context menus pop up. And the stroke color will be white, and I want to make this just a little bit thicker. Here we go. Okay, so this will be my line chart. What I want to do is to be able to animate the points inside the line chart. So I will have some kind of a data flowing from a web service or something, okay? I will get it. I'm not going to do that, just imagine, okay? I'm getting some kind of a data from somewhere, and then I want to change the positions of every line point, and I'm going to do that with an animation, obviously. That's the fun part of the work. So I need to create the first prototype animation that should be used by the developer. Okay, because the developer will data bind this, but I need to create the animation first as an implementer kind of. So at the moment, the object that I selected is path. If I start animating the path, this is like the whole object. I don't want to animate the whole object. I want to animate the points inside it. I'm going to pick the direct selection tool from the left toolbar. When I pick the direct selection tool, instantly I start seeing the points. I can pick them and start animating. I'm going to pick every point and move them a little bit, like up or down, right? That is the animation that I want to build. I really don't know how much up or down I need to move these points because It will be a decision that the developer will do, right, according to the data it has. I just want to create the differences, the changes between states, and that's all I want to do. Actually, I forgot to add keyframes, obviously, and I didn't even create an animation, and you're not telling me anything. So I'm change. Let's put 2 keyframes in here very fast, because I'm just going to repeat what I did. Okay, and now move these points. By the way, I am on the first second. Okay, at the beginning, the line chart will look like this. At the first second, I'm just going to move everything a little bit up or down. Here we go again. The trick that I am doing right now is to move the points with my keyboard instead of with my mouse. Because if I move them with my mouse, I will move them slightly horizontally as well, right? I can't strictly move them vertically only. And so my hand will shake or something going to go bad and they will move right or left. I don't want to move them vertically. I want to move them horizontally only. Because whatever I do, it happens to be a change, okay, a state change. And Blend starts creating recording the differences, right? So I don't want to create a difference in the vertical coordinates. I want to create a difference, sorry, it's the other way. I don't want to create a difference in the horizontal coordinates. I want to create a vertical difference. So that's why I pick every point one by one and I move them with my keyboard. So when I play this animation right now, it's just a slight, small animation, okay? That's it. Close the storyboard, save it. The animation is ready. The implementer does it work. So let's put a little button in here as well, just in case, and give that a name, like again, button click, and save. So when I click the button, it will go and fetch some data, and it will start animating the line to the coordinates that the data should, map. And that's what we're going to do as a developer. Go back to Visual Studio, open main page XAML. Oops. Okay. So this is the animation. I know it looks a little bit scary, but it's easy. We're going to look at that, but first let's go down and look at the pad object that we have in here. So I'm trying to understand the XML code at the moment, and what I'm trying to find is the coordinates of every joint, every point, right? Let me scroll a little bit. Is it visible right now? It is clearly there. I had 5 points, and I see 5 different X and Y coordinates. I don't need to know anything, actually. It's clearly visible. 5 different points. Cool. So it looks like we got a path figure, which has a starting point, the X and Y coordinates. Then I have 5 line segments with, again, X and Y coordinate point properties. Good. Someone should animate these properties, right? Let's go up and see the animation that Blend created. Anim changes here. This time I got point animation using keyframes. I'm targeting the point property of something. The target name is pad. Okay, I'm targeting the pad. But from the pad, I need to go down, like in here. From the pad, I need to go through the data of the pad, which is a pad geometry. I need to go through the pad geometry and find out the pad figure, right? I need to animate this first. And then again, I need to go one level down and access these line segments and animate the point properties of these line segments. So it's like I target a master object, I go down and down into the sub-levels, and then target the right properties. How does that happen? Here we go. The target property says, from the pad, there is something called data, which is pad geometry. From the figures, get me the first one, index number. This will be a pad figure, and start animating the start point. For all the other animations, it's like the data, pad geometry, figures, first one, pad figure, segments, first one, the line segment, and the point. So it's like for every point animation, I got multiple point animations inside the same storyboard, by the way, because I want to animate 5 different points. Okay? 5 different objects inside the same storyboard. I got 5 different point animations. Every one of them is targeting the pad and then going down and down until they find the exact property that they want to animate. Good. Now I do have an understanding of what this code looks like. So what do you think? Which one do you think of these properties or anything out here I need to change? What is the exact value that I need to change in order to manipulate this storyboard? If I had this as a saved object, which is actually the case, I have this storyboard as a saved static object, right, in my page. So I want to change some of the properties or something of this storyboard before I start playing it. So it looks like, let's look at the start point animation. It looks like that the start point animation takes the point from this value to this. Or let's look at the second one. The second one takes the value from here to here. As you see specifically on this one, because the first one, I guess I moved the point a little bit horizontally as well. At the second one, I clearly see that the x coordinate is not changed. The y coordinate is changed. This is the animation that we created. So if I do change this value and then start playing the animation, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, it will just go to the coordinate that I want, right? Like it's going from 0 to 1. Remember the opacity stuff? It goes from 1 to 0. What if I change the 0 and make it 0.5 and then play the animation? It will just go to 0.5. It will not go to 0. So in this case, the point is in an xy coordinate, and the animation is saying, okay, from 1, 1, you will go to 2, 2. Instead, I'm just changing the target coordinate, and then playing the animation. It will take from 1, 1 to wherever I want, right? So it looks like these are the values that I need to change programmatically, access there, manipulate it, change it, and then start playing the animation. Let's go back. I know what I'm going to manipulate in the storyboard right now, but I need to write some random codes. Randomizer, so that I can have some product sales value or something that I can show in the line chart. Here's what I'm going to do. Random, get me new one. OK, go back here. I want to change this value. This is the second point's y coordinate, which will be there at the end of the animation. How can I access this? Or how can I access this object? I know that I could access the anim change, right? So I'm able to access the master object. I need to go here. So I can go step by step down every level. I know that inside the storyboard, there's a collection of point animation using keyframes. So let's take a look at that. Here we go. Children. If an object has a collection of items, usually it's items or children, two names that we use for properties. Usually it's that. So from the children, get me the second one, because that's the one I'm going to access right now. Get me the second one, and I know that this object is a point animation using keyframes, so I do the casting. So when I'm done with the casting, let's see what I have. So this is a point animation using keyframes, and actually from the point animation using keyframes, I am here right now. From this one, I want to go here. It looks like I need to go one level down again. This time, we got a keyframes collection. From the keyframes, get me again the second one. And I know that the second one is an easing point keyframe. Let's do again a casting. Here we go. Go at the end. Oops. OK. The property that I wanted to change was the value. Here we go. Equals something. So I did go one level down and again one level down, and now I'm able to access the attribute, the property of that particular object, and I'm going to give a new Okay, this is not good. Yeah. We got 15 minutes. And there is no way to postpone this. How lucky I am. And there is no way even to minimize this. Okay. Let's keep that there. I mean, it will just shut down randomly. It will be just some...
Maybe you can kill it.
The process, I don't think it will just work. If I kill it, maybe it will just restart instantly, which I don't want to have right now. Let me finish this, at least this example in 15 minutes. So the value, what is the value? Let's take a look at that. Let me zoom a little bit. This is a point. Great. So I can create a new point and assign it to this value. Let's go here, new point. Like I said, actually, I don't want to change the x coordinate. I want to change the y coordinate. So it's a good idea to exactly give the same x coordinate back to the object. Here we go. Let's take this down. Okay, the x coordinate, let me open this. The x coordinate will be the same x, and the y coordinate will be like random next, let's say between 1 and 100. So I changed the animation. I manipulated the animation. Now is the time to play it. Begin. And F5. Let's see what's going to happen. I only changed the animation for only one point. It looks like there's a problem, right? Every time I start, they all start from the same point. But the second point specifically, it goes to a different target every time. That was the part that I manipulated. I only changed the target coordinate of the second point. So focus at the second point, and you're going to see. So now it's here. The second time, it's down. So it looks like my code is working. I just need to apply it for all the points and make a little bit good looking. Because I really don't like the idea of going down and down step by step, because it looks like I got some index numbers. I mean, and that's not a good practice, because if someone comes up, the designer, and change the animation, it adds a new keyframe or something, all my code will just break. So let me go here, and instead of finding this object through the element tree, I'm going to give a name to this object, keyframe 2. That's it. If I give a name to this object, I should be able to access it from my IntelliSense menu on the back end. So instead of this code, it will be like keyframe2.value and keyframe2.value.x. This looks far better. Okay? So let's give names to all these other objects. Keyframe1. My roller on the mouse is going crazy. So 3, 4, 5. Same thing for all the keyframes that I have. 1, 2, 3, 5, I guess. Okay, so, and by the way, I really don't know how high I can go. I go from 1 to 100, but maybe I could go higher. Let's check what is the highest y coordinate. Actually, when I created this line, the second point is the highest point, and the first point is the lowest point, I guess. So let's take a look at that code right now. This is the first point's y coordinate, and this is the second point's y coordinate. If the first point has a higher value in y coordinate than the second, it looks like the 0 to 0 is the left top corner. So I can go from 0 to 140. It looks like the third point was the lowest point. So 140 should just work in here. And 1, 3, 4, 5. Let's copy this over. Here we go. Oops. Okay. So when I hit F5 right now, everything should go fine. F5. Actually, I'm lying. There's still a problem. Good. Looks good. Click again. There is something wrong, right? It always starts from the same coordinates because I didn't change the starting points. The starting points, the coordinates for the starting points in the animation up here are still the same. They're always the same. So what if I told you that we don't need a starting point? So instead of going from 1 to 0, just go to 0. I don't care what is your initial value. This is not something that you can do from scratch because what Blend does is creating XML codes out of the changes, right? So I need to create a change in that property so that I can have an XML generated. But after I create the change, I can delete some initial value from that. Okay, let me delete all the first keyframes in here. It will just leave the beginning values free. Yep. Go back. Please go back. It's not time to restart, please. Okay. Here we go. Looks good. If I keep clicking. Here we go. The data is flowing. Woohoo. Here we go. So this is the fun part that I like about this particular demo. So as you see, I mean, there's no need to use a third-party control in case you just need a simple line chart. So that's what makes us really productive, okay? So how does it make really productive if you don't use a third-party control? Because the third-party control can really mess a lot of stuff in your app. So if you are looking for a very lightweight solution that will just hit your needs, then building from scratch is my solution and my preference. And this is very easy on this platform. So I guess we did a good introduction with animations, right? Now we need to take a look at the data part of this, but I'm wondering how many minutes I have. Wow, I still have 7 minutes. Okay. And go away. Here we go. So for the data part, I'm going to use a SQL database that I have on the back end in here. Let me open that. Any questions so far, by the way? Wow, okay. Let's go to the local instance. Here we go. Okay. So I guess this is all Turkish, right? Oh, I have an English folder as well. Cool. The database is Turkish. It means trial, but still, we don't need to care about that. But the table that I'm going to use is this column. It is very, very simple, actually. This is something that I'm usually binding with the line chart that I do. But yeah, just see how we can pull this data into our Windows Phone app. Let's see if we have a couple of lines of data there or not. Yeah, we have it. Great. Go back in here. Let's actually do data binding for this particular project. It will be good. Okay. So the Windows Phone, the phone application, cannot exactly connect to your SQL server that you got installed on-premise, okay, in your company or in your hosting provider or somewhere. The phone application cannot directly connect to the SQL. I need a middleman, and the middleman will be the services, and hopefully this will be web services. In my case, I'm going to use SWAP web services, okay, the RPC services. But I would strongly suggest you to use REST services, okay? REST services that returns JSON would be really high performance, but I mean, it is actually out of our focus for today because first we need to understand how these things works. But then, I mean, you can start with SWAP services first, but if you are targeting that high quality bar, the highest performance. Remember that at some point you will need to migrate from SOAP Web Services to REST APIs. So, in any way, if we are talking about some kind of a service which will export XML or JSON or whatever from HTTP 80 on the server, it looks like I need some kind of an ASP.NET app. Not particularly ASP.NET. You could maybe use PHP or whatever you want, but in my case, because that's the only thing I know, I'm going to use ASP.NET. So what I do is I right-click my solution and say Add New Project. And this time, I'm going to add a website into my solution. In this solution, I already have a Windows Phone app. Part of my solution will be a website. I will get an ASP.NET empty web app and hit OK. Oops. It was just another timer. I love timers. OK. So inside this web application, the first thing that I need to do is to access the database, right? Again, that's totally out of our focus for today. But in .NET Framework, we can use Link to SQL or the Entity Framework or the ADO.NET. It's totally up to you. I'm going to use the Link to SQL. That's the part I like to use about these simple, very fast demos. So in order to create the database connection, I'm going to right-click this web app, click Add, and say New Item. So the thing that we're going to use is called actually Object Relation Mapping Frameworks. That's one of them. And hopefully it will get me the Windows sometime. OK. It will check the database and create the entities. OK. And I will be able to use the entities to access the SQL directly. I'm not going to write T-SQL. I'm adding this Link to SQL classes file. Oops. And as you see, it says, what does it say? Create data classes by dragging items from Server Explorer. So let's do that. Where is Server Explorer? Here it is. From Server Explorer, I need to connect to my SQL, and then, which is this DB actually. This is already a connection I created. And now from the tables, I'm going to drag and drop this numbers table into the UI surface. So the tooling creates the classes and all the database access code for me. And I simply save and close this DBML file, which is obviously database markup language. This is again actually an XML file if you open it with Notepad. So it looks like my database access is done. So now I need to wrap this with some kind of a web services, right? Right-click the web app, add new item again. This time, search for a web service. Click it, add it. Here we go. We got an Hello World web service. What I want to do with this web service is to return the list of numbers that I have in my table. The first thing is to create a connection, a context kind of to the SQL. And to do that, I'm going to create an instance of the file that I just created, the DBML file. I'm going to say create a new instance out of that DBML file. And this will be my context. When I go down, I know that I'm not going to return a string. Instead, I'm going to return a list of numbers. Okay? So the number object is defined by default because I created a DBML file. When I created the DBML file, the tool did go through the SQL, checked all the fields, checked the table name, and created a programmatic object for me that I can use to access that particular table, just like a collection. So I'm going to return a list of numbers, and this will be get numbers. So now let's say my result set that I'm going to return will be from data.numbers and select everything. So I know this looks a little bit strange if you are not used to this syntax that we call language integrated queries. No. Save. OK. Oh, the recording is going as well. I just want to, OK. I wanted to say yes, but good. No luck.
I think it was asking for plating, yes.
Sorry?
It was asking plating. Yes, you clicked yes.
Did I click yes? Anyway, it didn't give me time to save it anyway. And I hope this update doesn't take like 20 minutes. It's a good time to get questions. If you don't have it, we will just hang out like this. Or maybe you can tweet something just to use the time. Okay, it's coming. It's fast. It just did the reboot. The lunch will be at 1. So the most exciting part of the whole day. It will be at 1 o'clock. Where is Visual Studio 11? It's in my virtual machine. Why?
It's very fast. Actually, I'm using it.
It's very fast. You are using it. It's not released yet. And
It's not, but everything's working fine right now.
okay, that's nice to know. But I would never install something not released in my production machine because I don't wanna format it and start installing from scratch just in case something goes wrong. So I don't install anything not released on my production machine. I always keep on virtual stuff. So yeah, but I know I really liked it. I really like the changes that did it in the UI. And this doesn't take a year, right? Yeah, go ahead.
What is the level of your Diablo 3 character?
Okay. What is the level of my Diablo 3 character?
Or your account name.
My account name?
Yeah.
My account name is actually my first name and the last name. I don't remember the number, by the way. There's this number that they put at the end of the what? Some kind of a hashtag. I don't remember that name, but I'm sure you can search for with the email as well. I'm using the same email that I have on my blog, so you should be able to find me. And the level was like 39, I guess. Yeah.
Actually, I can't because the Battle.net not
The Battle.net does not allow it?
because when they using the hashtag name and they
You can talk Turkish, by the way. It shouldn't be a problem. If
aslında Diablo doğru söylüyorsun. Yani kaldırdılar hashtag'i kullanmaya başladıktan sonra arama şeyini. Yani normal arayamıyorsunuz. Sadece hashtag ve isimle arayabiliyorsunuz.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Anyways, that's 39, I guess. I'm in Nightmare, and I just killed the butcher. And this is officially a very strange statement. I mean, I just killed the butcher. In our hometown, I didn't like the man, and
Are you
Yeah.
going to play tonight?
I don't think, no, I don't think I can play tonight. Maybe during the weekend. Okay, here we are back on stage. Let me open the same project again. Wow, thank you. Recover selected files. Close this one, not around. No. Yeah, I have Steam installed as well. They're all released. I mean, there's no problem about that. Okay, here we got everything back. I'm not sure if the web service was saved or not, the file. Yeah, it's saved. Okay, cool. Just give it a second so it will, okay. Come on. So, okay, this was the query we were talking about. And like I said, this is a language integrated query that we have in .NET Framework. And the thing that happens on the back end is this query gets translated into a T-SQL query that will be sent to SQL, okay? And SQL Server will return, obviously, a list of rows, and those rows will be mapped to objects. That's why we call it object relation mapping, okay? So the relationship mechanism that we have inside SQL will be mapped to entities and objects in our everyday programming stuff. So, and this query, actually, this particular inc keyword comes from incoming. That's just like an X or I that you use in a for loop, right? This is just a pointer. So I go through a loop, kind of, in the numbers collection, and I select every object. It's like select star from numbers, okay? I get the result and assign it to a result set, and then I'm going to simply return this result set, but casting or converting it to a list, okay? Because I wanted to return a list of numbers. So that's all the code that I need to write in order to get the data from SQL and send it back through my web service. Let's try this. Let's run the web service just once and see if that really works. By the way, just a second. I need to open this tool that I use for zooming, okay? Here we go. Right-click, Vim browser. And here we are. Get numbers, click it, and click again. This will invoke the web service and show us the result. And that's the result. So this is exactly the XML that the Windows Phone will start downloading and actually parse it back again to objects. But we're going to see the story. So that's the data that I'm going to use through my Windows Phone app. In order to do it, actually what needs to happen is that Windows Phone will go send a call to the web service, right? Get the XML that I just showed you, and make some kind of a meaning out of that XML, right? It needs to serialize that XML file to the number object that I was trying to send to the phone, right? Because what I did in my web service is to return a list of number objects. It did get serialized or transparently to XML. So the phone actually needs to deserialize it back to the object so that I can use in my C# code. And all that stuff will be handled automatically by the client-side proxy, the web service proxy that I'm just going to generate right now. I right-click the phone app, and I say Add Service Reference. And I have some strange pop-up. Just a second. OK. Right-click, Add Service Reference. I say Discover, because they're already in the same solution. The tool will be able to discover the address of the web service. That's the web service that I'm going to use. And this is just the dummy name that I'm just going to keep that like that, no problems. And that will be the name of the service reference object that will be created for my Windows Phone app. Yeah.
Will it work with the domain name localhost?
Yes, it will work. But when you go to production, obviously, you will need to change that endpoint. It will just work locally right now. OK, the service reference is ready. It's time to use it. Go into the main page. When the application runs for the first time, it's like here, right? So this is like the constructor of the main page. This is like the moment when this object is called, initialized for the first time. I don't really want to pull the data at that point. I want everything to settle down first. I mean, all the objects, I want them to be created in the memory, idle, everything is happy, everyone is happy. So I need to kind of wait for everything to be loaded instead of being initialized. So I go and attach an event listener to the page's loaded event. This will make sure that everything is in good place. Double tap, and here we are. When the main page is loaded, I want to call the web service. I know that Visual Studio created a service reference for me. So let's go and take a copy of that, an instance of that. From the service reference, OK, it's not coming. I hope it's not still the bug. Because the last time I was doing this, I had a very strange bug with this. And here I do have it again. OK. I'm really sorry about this, because this is a bug. Then the next day, it was just fixed on its own. It doesn't, the Visual Studio proxy generator doesn't just create the proxy. That's the problem I have. And this is only a problem that I have on my machine, I promise. So I'm just going to create a new service just to show you how it's used, because usually it doesn't have a problem with the Hello World. Let's test that. OK, add service reference to the Hello World. Here you go. OK, let's use the Hello World. It's not important. It will work on your machine. So here we go. What was the thing that I'm going to do? OK, service reference to and the swap client. OK, so I create a client out of this. I call it service. And now is the time to call a particular method from the service. In my case, it would be get numbers if that thing was working. Anyway, let's call the hello world. It's the same thing. It is just returning a data. The service dot, hello world async. If the other service was working, it would be get numbers async. So the name that we gave on the back end has just an addition on the end, like the suffix, which is async. What does it mean? So here's the story. If you call the web service and start waiting for that, you will not be able to respond to the end user. When an application goes up, it has a UI thread. Like the UI thread is the thread that you handle all the button clicks. When a user hovers a button and you change the color, right, that's the UI thread that handles all this stuff. If the UI thread is blocked from Windows, I mean from desktop, you will know that. If a UI thread is blocked, you will see this not responding dialog. Okay? So the application, if the application needs to do some hard work on the back end, usually what we do is we create a secondary thread. We do the work there so that our UI thread is not blocked and is able to respond to the user. Sometimes we use the UI thread to show just the progress of the work that we do on the backend thread. So in this case, it looks like if I start sending a request to the web service and start waiting for the response, because it will take a while, according to my, depending to my internet connection speed and stuff like that. So it would take 2, 3, 4 seconds maybe to load the data. And if I wait for the data to come in on the UI thread, I will not be able to respond to the end user, and the application will feel like, from the end user perspective, it will feel like it's not responding to me. It's blocked. So I don't want to do that. And so, OK, I could create a backend thread and start the request there and listen for the finalization of the request on the backend thread. But Microsoft knows that multi-thread programming is not something we love. I mean, we need to do it most of the time, but it's not something that we love to do because it's not easy, right, managing threads, specifically managing the synchronization of threads and stuff like that. So instead, they created us async operations, asynchronous operations. So when I call this method will not return me data instantly. I will not get the result. I will just start to call. So this is not like a method that will return you anything. We just call this method and go on. Okay? If I had additional lines of code in here, they will just run without waiting for the first call to be finalized. Actually, this is just starting the call. This is not the call itself. This is starting the call. The operation of starting the call is done, so you can go on. So when the call has a response, someone needs to tell me. So I will get that data and use it, right? Someone needs to just give me some kind of a notification when the data is arrived to the phone. And that notification is again inside the service object. Oops. And that is called hello world completed. So for every method that you create, the service reference proxy generator tool, whatever it is, it creates a call function and a completed function. So you start listening the completed event, and when the call has been finalized and there's a response, or maybe an exception, whatever it is, you will be able to get it if you listen these particular events. So I'm going to attach an event listener to hello world completed, and here we go. It's time to get the data. If the call is finalized and the data is arrived, give me that. How can I get that? If I scroll right a little bit, you will see that the event arguments for this particular event is actually different than all the other events that we know. It is defined specifically for this event. Because I got a hello world completed event arguments, there should be something, something specific about that, right? Let's go there and see what we got. Result is here. And the result in this case will be a string because the hello world returns a string. Again, if we go back to our numbers example, which didn't run in my case, I would have a list, a collection of numbers in here. So the number object would be copied over to the Windows Phone. Okay? The object definition itself, which exists only on the server, right, inside the ASP.NET file, would be copied over to the client, to the Windows Phone app, and I would have a list of those objects when I go and take a look at the e.result property. In this case, it's just a string. So what I can do simply is maybe show the string in a message box just to see if that really runs, and F5. So the application will start. It will start request instantly, and it will get the data and show it to me. It will be very fast because it's all local. Here we go. The data request is done, the response is here, and I got my message from the server. How does that look like? You can have multiple services like this, and you can have multiple methods. One of the obvious practices that you can implement is like you can have some kind of a loading screen, right? With an animation maybe. You are just putting a rectangle or something on the screen. I have no idea. Maybe I'm turning, burning something. Turning, burning, right? Yeah. That's an exact, like chicken translate. That's an exact translation from Turkish to English. I have no idea if that makes sense in English. Yeah. So, but you got the point. When you call the service, what we do is usually we call an animation as well. And that animation puts some kind of a loading screen on top of everything that we have, like an additional layer in front, okay? That layer can hold all the loading animations, additional stuff, maybe some kind of an information, like something is getting loaded or whatever. So you start pressing call, you instantly start the animation. The animation brings the loading screen on top of the stage, and then when the completed event is fired, we call another animation, which should obviously remove the loading screen out of the screen, okay? And then show the data. So that's the whole story that we usually implement. Any questions? It looks like I'm really doing a very good job here because no one is asking questions. Or no one have any idea what I'm doing. Yeah. That's something that I didn't want to emphasize actually. Yeah. Do we have any questions on the web maybe? This was the website, right? You have one on the web?
No,
Okay.
mobile.
Okay. Go
For
ahead.
example, I have built an application for mobile, and I need to upgrade it. Can I upgrade it?
Sorry, I lost the beginning.
I made it, an application
Yeah.
for mobile,
For mobile, what do you mean mobile? With Windows Mobile or the Windows Phone?
Windows Phone, sorry.
Okay, you did build an application for Windows Phone.
And I need an upgrade.
Okay, from 7.0 to 7.5 kind of thing?
New application, new release.
Okay, you got a new release.
And can I update this?
Yeah, sure. Oh, that's me. Okay, here is a story. Actually, that's one of the things maybe we should talk. I'm not sure. I wasn't there for the keynote. I missed it. So maybe they show it there. They did show it there, but I'm not sure again. So here is a story about how you can publish your app and how you can, do all this stuff, get a developer account maybe. Because at some point you will need to test your app on a phone. One of the disadvantages of using the emulator is that the emulator doesn't emulate the CPU, the processor, or the memory. Okay, the memory will be changed in the next phase, in the next wave. We will have the emulator emulating the memory as well. But for now, it doesn't emulate the processor or the memory. So your application could be running very, very fast. But if you, upload it to a phone, you can see it just struggling. Okay, that was one of the cases that we had. Okay, we were building an app for a company, and their policy required 2048-bit encryption. Okay, for the service. We did it. It was working. We decrypted on the phone. It was working great on the emulator. It was like taking 1 or 2 seconds to do the decryption of the data. Then when I uploaded the stuff into a real hardware, I had a progress indicator. Okay, the 1% took about 35 seconds. So it was like you will need to wait for hours to get that decrypted data. And obviously, we changed the whole mechanism afterwards. But if we didn't test the application on the phone, we would never know that. That's the problem. So I strongly suggest you to buy a Windows Phone if you are planning to ship something to the marketplace, which is, I guess, the case as you are here, right? So buy a Windows Phone and test it on the Windows Phone. And here's the bad news. By default, if you buy a phone, you cannot put apps into it. What does it mean? You can buy apps from the marketplace, but you cannot deploy apps from your PC to the phone. In order to be able to deploy apps to the phone should be developer unlocked. It's not something about like jailbreaking, okay? It's just developer unlocking. So, and in order to be able to developer unlock a phone, you need a developer account. And here's another good news. You cannot get a developer account from Turkey or from a lot of the other countries in the region. So what you can do is you can go to this website called YaLabs. So this really makes sense for everyone in the region, but I should say that in Turkish, Yalla means licking, which means a little bit, which sounds strange. Licking apps. So beautiful. You can even lick them. So this is the website. You need to get an account from there, okay? They are kind of behaving like being a proxy between you and the marketplace. So from this website, you get your account. Then you will be able to unlock your device and be able to upload your apps, sideload kind of, with a USB cable to your phone. After you are done, you will log in into this website and upload your ZAP file only, okay? Here's the thing. When you build an app, actually everything goes into just one package. When I open the folder, for this, go into the bin directory, not into the debug. Hopefully you will compile it for release as well. But this is the file that you need to upload to the marketplace. That's it. They don't check your code. They just test it. They test your application. They don't look at your code, okay? Don't worry about it. They just test, and they test it manually, by the way. They upload it into their phone and they use it. And what is the name? Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. There's even a Turkish version. Actually, there's a link. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess there's a bot testing the programs because I had a problem with one of my software. It was kind of like a social game that you play in your apartment or school. And they returned me and they declined the software. And I asked why. I called Microsoft USA. They told me that in the result, they told me that it contains sexual content and gambling. And then I asked them, like, it doesn't have anything like that. And they told me on the phone that there's a bot testing the softwares, and there are some keywords. They told me that it may have seen that keyword.
Yeah. So, yeah, so actually...
it's a little crazy.
So the solution is simply, actually, after the submission process and the testing, they give you a simple PDF file with the list of problems and possible solutions.
Yes.
The solution for sexual content or whatever it is, okay, is not to submit to every country because in some countries, they don't want to push these apps. I don't know why. There should be some legal issues there. But if you keep these countries out, usually it is listed in the PDF in the report file as well. If you keep these countries out, you should be able to publish it.
And I want to say that when I want to send a ticket, I'm always saying that there are 42 people online on the app hub, create.msdn.com. Always 42 people every time. I don't know. And I'm sending tickets and they don't return. So
okay, that's
okay.
nice feedback. We should just flow them out to the building, to the Microsoft guys. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay, so that's just nice feedback. I can't say anything else about that. But yeah, this is the website that you need to go through. You get an account, you publish here, and you only upload your ZAP file and some additional assets like the icon of your app, some screenshots of your app, the description of your app, a little small text or something, and then you do the publishing. The testing goes through, when it's finalized, it goes to the marketplace. After the publishing has been made, it takes like another additional day to list the app in the search results, so just be patient about that, okay? If you want to push an update, it's like pushing a new app, but this time, obviously, you pick your app and click the update button. You again send your ZAP file and the new assets if you want to change it, and it will automatically go like as an update, but the process looks like 100% the same like publishing a new app. It doesn't change from our developer's perspective, okay? I guess that was the question. Actually, I can even log in here. I have a very nice account there. Here we go. If I do remember my password right, or this one. Here we go. So this is the UI of the site, okay? So if you want to submit an app, you simply click this one. You should read all this stuff. I did it in the past. That's why I'm just skipping. You put the application name, the default language of the app. So here is one of the problems. Do you see Turkish or Arabic or anything? No. So the thing that we do is we publish the app in our native language, but in the description that we will just put here down here, okay? No, that's not the part. Description, where are you? That's on the next step, by the way. Okay, on the next step, it will ask us a description for the app. In the description, you need to specify that the application is Turkish or whatever it is, okay? Just write one line of English description and say, hey, this is Turkish, so that the people who doesn't know Turkish doesn't download the app simply. If you do that friendly description, friendly reminder, it should be just good to go through the publishing certification process. Sorry? How does the stuff appear on the marketplace? Let me show it to you. I don't, sorry. Yeah. I don't want anyone to kill me in this building, so Windows, phone, marketplace. And here we go. This was simple, actually. So this is the web marketplace. If I search for my account, here we go. These are the apps that I have. Yeah, Find the Lady. It is interesting, right? It sounds interesting. Let's find it. Here we go. That's all you're gonna find, actually. There you go. You shuffle and find the lady behind the card. And as you know, as many ladies as you find, as higher gets your score. So this is how the application looks, the icon, okay? The reviews, which says the application is lame. Anyway, the screenshots. And this is actually my description, which is, again, I guess, lame. So that's the way your apps will get listed. This was better, actually. See, I even have updates, you see. I list the changes. This is all part of the description, actually. If you want to put the stuff into that, the version changes into the description, that's okay. If you have a Turkish app, which I do, actually, here we go. I did put the description totally in English, but I said it is simply, the app interface is English, but the whole content is Turkish. You will need to be able to read Turkish in order to enjoy our amazing content. So that's just 2 lines of stuff that you can write, and that will help you to pass through the certification if you build apps with your native language. Okay.
One more question.
Sure, go ahead.
As a default language, it remains just select language, or do we have to select English information or not?
No, you can select simply English, yeah. And the description can be in English. The default language will be English, okay? But inside the description, you just let people know.
I understand the
Yeah.
Latin part, but the question is involved. Do we have to select any language from
Yes, yes. You have to select something.
English information?
Exactly, yeah. And at the 5th step in here, the pricing step, it will ask you which regions you want to publish, with what kind of pricing, okay? And this is the step that maybe you shouldn't pick the countries who are sensitive to sexual content. Yeah.
There are some applications that support one more language. How we can do that?
So the thing, you can have 2 different ways to do it. The first one is you can detect the culture, but the problem is, if you are targeting different languages, hopefully you will need different descriptions for every language as well, right? So here's the problem. If you have one app which targets like 6 different languages, you will put just one description with 6 different languages inside the same app's website, web page? No. So instead, people prefer publishing different apps, not different, the exact app with the particular language interface, okay, to that particular area. So like I said, when you publish an app, you can select regions. So if you have an app that you want to publish in Turkey and in US, what you do is you localize them. You keep the code base the same, by the way. You just localize them with an initializing parameter maybe, okay? And then you build it differently for 2 languages, and you publish it for the US marketplace, you publish it for the Turkey marketplace, so that it will just look better. The other way is that you can just publish the app, it will change itself on the fly, but then on the marketplace, it will have the English description, Turkish description on the same page. maybe for 2 languages it's not a huge problem, but if you go 6 or 7 languages, it will be a problem. And the comments will be mixed. So Turkish comment will be visible on the US marketplace. English comment will be visible. It's not that friendly. Okay. So, great. Here we go. Let me open my presentation again so we can conclude on this one. Here we go. I guess we already did the Q&A. So that's the end of our session for now. It's time for food. 1 hour later, we will meet here again with the second session where we're gonna focus on hardware access, GPS, accelerometer, and stuff like that.